Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, depending on, where you are in this world. God bless you. This is Gloria White coming to you from Utah, USA. Now, today we're going to start the second book of Samuel in the Old Testament in the King James Version of the Holy Bible. Now, here we have a conflicting story that is contrary to what was said in the final chapter, chapter 31, in the book of 1 Samuel, where it said that Saul fell on his own sword. Now, I tend to believe that, and here's the reason why. Because the boy or man that brings the crown here to David in chapter 1 in 2 Samuel says that he fell on Saul. Now, he was an Amalekite. And David in chapter 28, or no, chapter 30, let me double check that. I don't want to say it wrong. Yeah, chapter 30 in 1 Samuel, David and his men went to war against the Amalekites because they had burned Ziklag and taken all their wives and children. And they went to battle against them because the Lord said he would, David would be victorious. And they received everything that was taken. They got it all back. Nothing was amiss. So here we have in chapter 1 in 2 Samuel the Amalekite who said he took the crown and fell on Saul. So I tend to believe that Saul fell on his own sword, and that the Amalekite thought because he took the crown that he would receive some sort of reward. Instead, David said by his own mouth he condemned himself. So let's read chapter 1, and we can reconcile that in our minds any way we wish, but looking at chapter 30 in 1 Samuel, and the fact that David and his men went against Amalekites because they stole and they burned Ziklag and took all their children and wives. So I seriously doubt that an Amalekite would come to David with any other thought or idea than that he would receive a reward for bringing that crown and bracelet and claiming that he had fallen on Saul at Saul's request. But here we go. Chapter 1. Now it came to pass after the death of Saul, when David was returned from the slaughter of the Amalekites, and David had abode 2 days in Ziklag. It came even to pass on the 3rd day, that behold, a man came out of the camp from Saul with his clothes rent, and earth upon his head. And so it was, when he came to David, that he fell to the earth and did obeisance. He fell down and prostrated himself before David. And David said unto him, From whence comest thou? And he said unto him, Out of the camp of Israel am I escaped. Now, David is fighting against the Amalekites. How could an Amalekite be in the troop in the camp of Israel? A good question, huh? And David said unto him, How went the matter, I pray thee, tell me. And he answered, The people are fled from the battle, and many of the people also are fallen and dead. And Saul and Jonathan his son are also dead. Now, we have to remember that Saul was in battle with the Philistines. So this is another thing that doesn't jive with what this young man is saying. And David said unto the young man that told him, How knowest thou that Saul and Jonathan his son be dead? And the young man that told him said, As I happened by chance upon Mount Gilboa, behold, Saul leaned upon his spear, and lo, the chariots and horsemen followed hard after him. And when he looked behind him, he saw me, and called unto me, and I answered him, Here am I. Now Saul had, in chapter 31, in 1 Samuel, requested that his armor bearer fall on him. but he refused. And he said unto me, Who art thou? And I answered him, I am an Amalekite. He said unto me again, Stand, I pray thee, upon me, and slay me, for anguish is come upon me, because my life is yet whole in me. So I stood upon him and slew him, because I was sure that he could not live after that he was fallen. And I took the crown that was upon his head, and the bracelet that was on his arm, and I have brought them hither unto my Lord. Then David took hold on his clothes, and rent them, and likewise all the men that were with him. And they mourned and wept, and fasted until eve. For Saul and for Saul and for Jonathan his son, and for the people of the Lord, and for the house of Israel, because they were fallen by the sword. And David said unto the young man that told him, Whence art thou? And he answered, I am the son of a stranger, an Amalekite. And David said unto him, How wast thou not afraid to stretch forth thy hand to destroy the Lord's anointed? And David called one of the young men, and said, Go near and fall upon him. And he smote him that he died. And David said unto him, Thy blood be upon thy head, for thy mouth has testified against thee, saying, I have slain the Lord's anointed. And David lamented with this lamentation over Saul and over Jonathan his son. We know that Jonathan and David were so close that they were closer than wives with their husbands in the love that they had for one another. Also, he bade them teach the children of Judah the use of the bow. Behold, it is written in the book of Jasher, the upright. Now, we have the book of Jasher, which is in the complete Apocrypha that I have bought off of Amazon, and we're going to read that. When we finish 2 Samuel, we're going to read the book of Jasher. So here it's saying that the children be taught the use of the bow in Judah. And so we'll see that. We should see that in the book of Jasher. Now the beauty of Israel is slain upon thy high places. How are the mighty fallen? Tell it not in Gath. Publish it not in the streets of Ascalon, lest the daughters of the Philistines rejoice, lest the daughters of the uncircumcised triumph. Ye mountains of Gilboa, let there be no dew, neither let there be rain upon you, nor fields of offerings, for there the shield of the mighty is vilely, or defiled, or cast away, and the shield of Saul, as though he had not been anointed with oil. Remember, Samuel anointed Saul because the people called for a king to be over them, rather than God, because the sound of God's voice, they thought for sure they would die, hearing this booming voice coming from the sky. So they called for a king, and Yahweh said, okay, I'll give you a king. And so then he sent Samuel, and he anointed Saul. From the blood of the slain, from the fat of the mighty, the bow of Jonathan turned not back, and the sword of Saul returned not empty. Saul and Jonathan were lovely and pleasant in their lives, and in their death they were not divided. They were swifter than eagles, they were stronger than lions. Ye daughters of Israel, weep over Saul, who clothed you in scarlet with other delights, who put on ornaments of gold upon your apparel. How are the mighty fallen in the midst of the battle? O Jonathan, thou wast slain in thine high places. I am distressed for thee, my brother Jonathan. Very pleasant hast thou been unto me. Thy love to me was wonderful, passing the love of women. How are the mighty fallen, and the weapons of war perished. And that concludes chapter 1. So there's a little bit of difference in the way the story was told on how Saul died. But I think the Amalekite was lying. That's my personal opinion based on the history in 1 Samuel before chapter 31, the final chapter. And as always, I love you.